Hello, welcome back to the VMP Performance channel. My name is Jeremy and today we're going to be working on a Gen3R install. This one is a 15, but this video will pertain to everything from 11 to 17. So let's get started. So we're going to start by disconnecting your positive side battery terminal. You're going to start with pulling these 3 clips here and pulling your battery cover off. Take your 10mm nut here, loosen it, give it a little shake, pull it out, disconnect here from here, pull this over to the side. Next, we're going to take our cross member off. These are 15mm nuts. So now you're going to take your 15mm nuts off. There are 4 of them. Go ahead and get this out of the way. So next we're going to remove this brace. This doesn't come on all applications, but if you are putting on the Gen3R, this needs to be removed and this piece needs to be trimmed off. We're going to go ahead and pull it off and set it aside for now. It's got these 4 clips you'll want to remove. Now that you got this out of the way, you can go ahead and take the end of your screwdriver and hold up this section, and all these bolts are 13mm. Go ahead and take the easy ones off. Next, you can do this with a regular wrench. I like to break them all free, and then I take my ratchet wrench and remove the remaining 3 13mm bolts. Now just simply lift up this corner slotted. And lift up here and just slide it forward. It comes right out. So now we're going to remove the engine cover, which you just simply get up underneath it and pull straight up. It's got 4 tabs on it that lock into here. It's just simply a press fit. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the air filter. This one has a cold air on it, but your factory one is really similar. So it has all the same components, like your 10mm hold down bolt here, and all your clamps are still going to be 8mm. So let's go ahead and take this off. You are going to save this for later. And there is also a metal spacer and this grommet. You need to save these for your install. Next you come over and you grab the band clamp. It's 8mm. Go ahead and pull that forward. You're going to remove your PCV vent hose. Just take your screwdriver and it's a quick release. Just pull it over and pull it up. These are also quick releases. You can just tab it in and pull them out. On this one too. Just push in, pull it out. Now what's left is your mass airflow sensor. This has a safety lock on it. You're going to pull your safety lock out, squeeze the tab and pull. You are also going to want to retain your mass airflow sensor. So we're going to go ahead and pull this out and put it to the side for now. Now we can go ahead and remove this, and this we'll just simply pull it over, get this to come to the inside of the fender, and it'll pull straight up. So next I am going to evacuate some of my coolant out of here. This is not necessary for a Gen3R install, but it will help me show you guys later down inside all the steps. And I just find it a lot easier. But if you're going in for a quick change of something, you don't have to do this. So these are 10mm bolts. Remove the 2 bolts. And my evacuator, I've actually sleeved this hose down into here, so I'm pulling from down in there. So next I want this coolant jug out of my way. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the bypass hose. These clamps you will need to save for later, but I am going to change this hose out. Now I use my trim tool for my hoses just because they fit so well. It's a good trick. Save your hose clamps. Put those aside. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the jug out of our way just so we can all get a better view of everything. And when you pull this line, you're going to want to put a catch pan up underneath. I use my catch pan with a splatter tray on top of it. Big trick to these hoses, especially if you're dealing with something a little older, is take your hose pick, get up in there, rotate it around the pipe once, and this hose is ready just to pull right off. There you go. And now that I pulled all the coolant out of it, I didn't leave a big mess. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the intake. To get the intake off, we're going to have to get these fuel rails out of the way. I've already drained the coolant. You don't have to remove these on a regular install, but we're going to go ahead and lift the heater hoses off, and just to make it a lot simpler to work with. So you start by squeezing these. And set this off to the side. It pins over here really well, right behind the master cylinder. So go ahead on this passenger side. Your hose pick tool works great for these clips as well. Go ahead and pick him up and put him back here in the battery tray area. So now we've got those out of the way, we're going to get our fuel line. So this is still pressurized, so you're going to get a rag. You're going to go ahead and squeeze this blue lock and push it up. Make sure to be holding it, and then cover over this, pull forward, and then pull back. Just like that. So now we're going to remove the 10mm nuts, your fuel injecting sound deadeners. Going to remove these. Next we can get your brake booster line out of the way. Just simply grab a hold of it here and pull it out. If you break these do come in the new kit. So now go ahead and get you a pair of needle nose, and you can pull all your injector wires off. I prefer to use the needle nose because I can go in here and I can squeeze the lock tab down and pull at the same time. Squeeze them and then pull back on the wire and the connector at the same time. Just like that. So now we're going to put your brake booster line out of the way, and then the fuel rail is held by 4 of these 10mm bolts. My trim tool works great in here. Now you don't want to separate your injectors off the rail yet, or you could flood the cylinder with fuel. So I like to pull the fuel injectors up with the rail. Now the whole assembly should lift straight up, just like that. Next, we're gonna go ahead and pull off our PCV hose. Just quick connects, slide them up, and this will pull straight off. Now we're going to remove our vacuum and our evap hoses. These are also quick connects. Just squeeze this together. It comes right apart. This one has a lock on it. You just spread the lock and it'll come off. And then it also has a squeeze lock. Squeeze it down, pull that forward. Go ahead and take the connector off your Purge solenoid. So go ahead and take this assembly and we're going to set it off to the side. You are going to take your Purge solenoid off now and go ahead and set this aside. It's 2 8mm bolts. So we're going to save that guy, but these we're not going to use again, so you can just go ahead and put them right back in. Next, you're going to unlock this vacuum line from the wire harness. I'm going to pull it off so you can see this a little better. It's just got this little safety clip that pops right off, and you can pull that out. So now we're going to go to the 8mm bolts holding the intake down itself. Now you have your throttle body connector. It's got the safety lock where you have to pull out, squeeze your tab in, and remove that. And the fun part back here is the IMRCs. So lift the throttle body nose up like this, pull your whole intake forward, and you can go ahead and start unclipping them. There are the 2 blue connectors up top. And you get those guys, and that'll let you rotate it this way, and you can get to this connector back here. So this one has a safety lock on it. The red safety tab will have to be pushed down. And then you can squeeze the connector. If you're having trouble separating any of these connectors, push them together, squeeze the connector, and then pull it. And then right next to that connector, there is a barb that holds the wire harness to it. You can go ahead and grab your needle nose and get in there and release the wire harness. It'll have the exact same thing on the other side. So we're going to rock this over. So lift up. You can see that connector there. It does have the red lock tab, which these take a lot of heat and they like to be ornery. So you unplug that one. So this one also has that barb in the back. This one's a little bit higher to reach. So I do use my trim tool and I can get up in there and release it from the back of the intake. Now your intake's free. So you're just gonna go ahead and simply pull it forward and lift it out. So this is the back of the intake we just removed. Here were the 2 blue connectors on the back, and here were the 2 white connectors on the back. It also has the parts where the wire harness is pinned in right there and there. So now we want to guard the engine right now, so we're going to clean all this off and seal it so we don't drop anything inside the crankcase. So a little bit of brake clean on a rag. So now we're going to remove this evap hose. which you just simply spread it right here. And then again, you can just pull this one off the strut tower like that. And then one more connection down here. Let's show you how to do that. So I struggle with this evap hose because these tabs here, these green tabs, they need to be pulled up and then be pushed in. So you got to push it up. Just like that. And then that one, you can come in, push her down, and then pull it right off. Now that we have our last connection undone, you can just simply pull this forward and it'll come right out. So this is the time that I like to go ahead and do my spark plugs. We recommend NGK's 6510s for this application, and your gap will be whatever your tuner decides is best for your modifications done to your car. So, but it's as simple as a tune-up. You remove your trim pieces and pull your coils and replace your spark plugs at the correct gap. So now go ahead and clean up your wires to your throttle body and to your purge solenoid. We're going to take this 90-degree bend out and we're going to straighten this. So this is real easy. Just take your razor blade, cut the tape off, straighten him out. Same thing with this one. You can see where the wires are. Keep your razor blade away from the wires and just trim just the tape off of that bracket. And this is actually tabbed into the connector. So you're going to want to take your small screwdriver and pull that up out of its little channel, out of the lock. Pull it back, and you can totally just remove that piece. Throw that in the garbage. I myself do like to use a little bit of black tape and make it look factory again. I do the same with the throttle body connector. Like this. So next we're going to take the knock sensors and we're going to spread them apart and ready to accept our new lower intake. So all you have to do is come back here. It's a push lock, and separate this. And then there are also push locks at the knock sensors. So go ahead and remove your harness from the car is the easiest way. So you take your knock sensor harness, and just like the purge solenoid harness, you're going to go ahead and cut right along this plastic harness right here. Make sure to keep your wires out of the way and your fingers. And then once again, you're going to come up, you're going to release the lock and push it back. And then you can just take this right off the harness, just like that. We're going to do it again to the other side. Pay attention to your wires, don't nick your wires. Lift up at the lock and push it back. Okay, like that. So now we need to separate right here and make these expand a little. So what you're going to do is take your razor blade and get it right in the center. Put a little nick, spread it apart and check for your wires. There's no wires there. So just continue on, give it a little slice, and then give it a little tug. Repeat that till you get like an extra inch of wiring. Just like that. So now we're going to tape this connection back up and make it look factory. Just like that, we're sealed back up. So now we need to reinstall this and relocate our knock sensors. So we're gonna go ahead and reinstall this connector back into the wire harness. Make sure you hear the click. You do not want to have to go back in for this. So make sure you hear it click. Now we're gonna loosen our knock sensors. These are 10mm bolts. Just break it back till they spin free. And you're gonna wanna come in and get as close as to the head as you can without touching the head. Go ahead and lock that down and make sure when you push on your connector, you don't accidentally touch the head or you will create a knock. It will remove timing. You will be mad. You've gotta do it to both sides. Once again, making sure you don't touch the head. So now that should accept our new intake. So now we're going to remove the accessory belt and we're just going to pull back this factory tensioner, which is a 15mm. You can use a regular wrench, you can use a tensioner tool, whichever you feel like. So just go ahead and tab it in and then just press straight down and then remove your belt. On stuff I'm not really familiar with, I always draw a diagram of what the belt should look like. If I don't have one available, that is a good idea if you have not done these before. So this part is the most fun out of the whole build, is you get to cut this stretch belt. So use lots of anger. Now we're going to install the intake manifold, but for filming purposes, we went ahead and we removed the upper radiator hose assembly. And when you do this, don't separate here because it'll always leak when you try to put it back together. Pull it off as a whole assembly like that. But this is not necessary for the install. This was just for filming purposes. So now to install our intake, we're going to have to cut this piece of the block right here. So to prep for that, you're going to need to seal off all the little holes to the engine. So to cut this piece, we're going to come back about 10 centimeters or 3/8 of an inch. So right about here. About that much off. And on the back side, we're going to go just a little bit deeper at about 1/2 inch to 15 centimeters. About right here. So make sure you're wearing safety gear. I like to wear my gloves and a full face shield for this. So just take your time. Now your cuts don't have to connect. You get them close and you just give it a light tap. And this piece will just come right off. Just like that. So now we're going to test fit our intake. Get that powdered aluminum off your runners. You want to do this before you untape, just in case you have to make adjustments. Perfect fit. So now that we've trimmed the block and we know our intake's going to fit, we can go ahead and clean the whole engine and remove our tape. I like to use a vacuum for this so I don't ram any of the material up underneath my tape. Before you set your intake down, you're going to want to check to make sure that you have all your gaskets on the bottom, that they're all in place. You're also going to want to check to make sure the rear plug is in. So next, your bolts will be torqued to 100 inch-pounds plus 30 degrees. So I will show you how to do that. So get all 6 of your bolts in and shake your intake around till you know that all your bolts are lined up and centered. Just take the bolts down till they barely touch, and you'll see it pull the intake down a hair. And whenever you're applying torque, you start at the center and work your way out. You always want to push that gasket flat. So I'm already set at 100 inch-pounds. I don't like to click it right off. I'll come back and torque my middle ones down after I get them close. So there, that one clicks. So now that they're all set at 100 inch-pounds, you'll go back in and you notice these two are a little bit looser because you just squished the outside down. So always come back around and double check your torque. They're still good. So those are good. So now we're going to do our 30 degrees. So if you spin it from here to here, you'll get 90. From here to here is 45. So we're going to go just a little bit less than that. It's about 30. And you can feel the bolt wanting to stop. And there you have it torqued down. So it's 100 inch-pounds with a 30-degree turn. So next we're going to move to your belt drive. This one will come in your kit. This is our no grind FIAD, so you don't have to cut your timing cover. If you're going for something a little more horsepower, maybe you have a smaller pulley, well, this is our new bomber bracket, and we will show you how to install this. This will be an upgrade to the kit. Okay, so we want to break out the pieces to this bomber bracket. We'll give you a good overview of it. It has shims on the back. The kit comes with its pulleys. Here's your extra tensioner pulley. That comes with its spacers for the back side of the bomber bracket. It will tab through the back side like this. So yeah, it sits flush in there. This is got a T on it. Make sure that T goes into the channel. Go ahead and let's do it on this side. You have your C-clip. And start with your middle bolt until you get adjusted and you need more adjustment. A good place to start. And there is your tensioner. And these will go onto this. And that's how the setup will look like. Now let's go to the car and get it installed. So now we're going to install our belt drive system. To start this, we're going to need to remove our water pump pulley. So the easiest way to do that is to just go ahead and grab a hold of the pulley with a screwdriver and just break it free. Set this to the side. So you're going to need to remove this 10 millimeter here, here, and here to start off with. And then you're going to need to go ahead and release this wire harness off of this clip, and you're going to have to remove this ground. That's a 10 millimeter nut. And then we're going to get this studded 13 millimeter off. So you'll notice your kit comes with different size bolts. You have one long one, you'll have 5 that are the same size, and you'll have these 2 little ones. 2 little ones get some washers for your pulleys. We'll install those in a minute. This big long one is actually going to be tabbed into here, into your lower intake, into that one. And that one will require a shim, and I'll show you how to get that shim in just a minute. So all these other ones will get the same size bolts. So we'll start at the bottom and work our way up. Now with your bracket still loose, you can pull it forward. And you're going to get your shims out. And this one actually has 2 shims in it. So it's a number 6 hex bolt. Okay, to check alignment, you bolt the 5 bolts directly to your engine, and then you run this bolt in to hold your shims, and you'll see there's a little tiny gap right behind here. Well, for this application, we have a select shim that we're going to go ahead and put in here. So just back off your bolts a little bit to give you some space. It doesn't really matter which side you put this on, but I like it in the front because when somebody looks at your engine, they don't see the shim. So now we're going to install our pulleys. I always like taking the C-clips and facing them towards the engine just because it looks a lot cleaner. These are still 6 hex heads. So finally we're going to install our adjustable pulley, which we already have the hub installed. It has the C-clamp pointing backwards just to make it look good. Make sure that your T is going to come in through the backside like this. You're always going to start with this center bolt until you adjust it to where you like for your application. Run your bolt through. And this would be your bomber install. So obviously you want this tension off when you install your belt, and then you can slide it forward and just take up all the rest of the slack in your supercharger belt. All right, now that we have our bomber bracket off, we went ahead and put our original bolts back in, and you'll see the big difference is with the no grind Fiat, we're not going to mess with this bolt. So we put all that back, we put our ground back. So now we're going to have to remove these 3 10mm. And here's your kit. You're going to take your 3 long bolts. You go in here, just like this. And these are, again, 6 hex head bolts. We're going to take our idlers, the C-clamps. We're going to put the C-clamps to the inside. So now we're going to get this ribbed idler installed. You're going to want to take the open end. It's going to face towards the engine. And it goes right on this boss here. So now we've got our ribbed idler on, we're going to go ahead and put our tensioner on. So the tensioner actually captures the belt on the inside. So you're going to have to get your belt. I flip the belt around inside out. And you'll see it's got a smooth pulley. So smooth pulley gets the back side of the belt. Hold your belt like this. And then you'll have a tab here that goes inside the timing cover. Make sure that you actuate your tensioner correctly. So now run your belt on the bottom side of your crank. Get it come up through the crank pulley up into your idler up here. And go ahead and wrap it around the bottom of the AC clutch. Get it wrapped through the ribbed tensioner. And make sure the belt passes in between the 2 idlers here. And this will hang out and wait for our supercharger. So if you're running a 79mm pulley on your supercharger or anything smaller than that, we highly recommend that you get this HD tensioner, and it comes with a relocation plate, and it simply installs the exact same way the other one does. So be sure to let us know of your power application and contact sales and support. So now we're going to put our water pump pulley on and get our accessory belt on. Now that we don't need the cameras down there anymore, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall our radiator hose. You did not have to remove this for the install. So now we're going to start with some of our wiring. Our air temp here is a brass style, and this is for 15 to 17. If you have an 11 to 14, this portion right here will be a black plastic. So those will be the differences in these two kits. Plus your wiring on the 11 to 14 will be a little bit different. You can find a link to the 11 to 14 wiring in the description below. I do recommend a little Teflon tape. This sensor is a 19. I choose to do this now because you can route behind your supercharger and make it look as nice as you'd like. This right here will be your Purge harness extension, and it's going to come around the back. Also, your throttle body harness extension, it as well will come around the back. I choose to zip tie some of mine in just for aesthetics, so I pull them real tight. Now you notice I did not grab the air temp over here because sometimes that just pulls your harness just a little bit too tight. So I'll bring it back here and I'll secure it back this way. Make sure that your connectors for your injectors are free and clear of your wiring. So now we have our wiring completed on top of the engine. We're going to move on to fuel. I want to remind everybody that fuel eats Teflon. You will not seal any kind of fuel with your Teflon, so don't even try. So this is what your kit will look like. If your fitting does come with an O-ring, you're going to want to go ahead and install those now so you don't lose them. So now we've unpackaged and we've laid out our fuel rails. So let's get to building it. This is the front side of your passenger side. This is going to take a plug on the end. So you take your fuel rail, put your plug on the end. This plug is an 8AN. Every now and then I need a helping hand, so I take a 10AN and I'm able to hold the fuel rail. And I can tighten it without marring the paint. Like that. Doesn't take much force. So next, you'll take your hose adapter. Don't forget to add some lube. And that will go onto the end, the back side of your passenger side fuel rail. This one is also an 8AN. So now we'll move to the driver's fuel rail, and we're going to put the front piece on, if you can see that, there is one a little bit further forward than the other one. So this one that's the furthest forward is going to take the fuel barrel. And this is actually a 10 AN right here. And this takes no more than just hand tight. You'll notice you don't see the brown O-ring anymore in between the two. So next we're going to connect that to the end of the driver's fuel rail. This is a 10 on this side as well. And then on the back side of the driver's fuel rail, you'll have a pivoting connection, a 90-degree. This one is still an 8 AN. So then finally we're going to put in our crossover tube. The crossover tube is an 8 AN as well. And you see when I tightened it, it's got an upward tilt to it. That is incorrect. So let's go ahead and back this off just a hair. So you're going to want to tilt this just a hair like this at an angle and then retighten it. So that way when you get to the car, it will flex down. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the injectors. You're going to pay attention to your injector connector lock right here. The connector lock should be tilted so where you can easily access the connector after it's installed. So move your O-ring, and this will face outward. And these will tilt towards the rear of the engine. Let's go ahead and flip this upside down. Now we are ready to install on the car. So now all I'm going to do is move my IAT connector up out of the way. We're going to put your injectors down into the intake ports And if you just give it a little wiggle back and forth, you can feel them seat themselves. Now we're gonna take our original fuel rail bolts. We're gonna go ahead and drop those in. Always a good idea to hand crank, hand tighten any of these bolts to get them started, just so you know you're not cross-threading anything. So now we can go ahead and connect our injectors, and this is where you'll notice that you have your locks in the correct position because you can see them and actually remove them. Be sure to hear the click on each connector. You can go ahead and hook up your IAT again. Now you take your fuel line, and your fuel line you'll push together and lock it down. Here is your beautiful Gen3R. Let's go ahead and get it out and get it prepped. So we're going to start on the back side, and we'll need to put our block off plate in here. Your matte block off plate. We're also going to need to install our vacuum line for our bypass valve. So we're going to take our matte block off plate, go ahead and put some super lube on your O-ring and just press him in place. This is a 5 hex head again. Let's go ahead and bolt him down now. Next, we're going to be moving over here. Take your vacuum barb. It's always a good idea to seal this just to make sure it doesn't leak. I'm going to use a little blue Loctite. So I take a 12mm wrench and I just spin it around until they're looking at each other. Next, we're going to install this vacuum line. You're going to want to fully seat it, then bring it over here and just cut a hair more than you need. And that completes your bypass vacuum. Next, we're going to move to the Purge solenoid. Still dealing with O-rings, so make sure you lube your O-ring. In your kit, you'll have the hardware for this. Comes with 2 standoffs. Go ahead and get your O-ring to insert itself inside there. And then once you line it up, you can go ahead and push it down flat. And these are still 5 hex head. You're going to want to pay attention to make sure that the back end is plugged. That should be there. And you're never supposed to lift up on this valve itself. Always grab a hold of the supercharger or the vacuum line on the back. Now we're going to flip it around. This is where I like to install my supercharger pulley. These are 5 Allens. Now when I get this to the car and I put a belt on, I'm going to double check my torque on these bolts. Okay, so now let's get this to the car. Okay, so next we're going to take our hardware kit for installing the supercharger. Let's break this open. Out of all these, you'll notice there's a little tiny one. That little tiny one's going to go right into this hole up front. So let's set him off to the side. So now take one of your bolts and you're going to put it back in here, and that's actually going to capture the backside of the supercharger. The supercharger is equipped with a little crow's foot on the backside. So you guys did not need to take this off, but this will have to be installed before we do our supercharger. You're also going to want to take your little bypass nipple here, and I slide a 10mm deep well socket over it, and we're going to pull towards the front of the engine in this direction, just like that. That'll give us enough room to put our hose on when the supercharger is installed. So now I'm going to show you where this bolt goes on the back side of the supercharger. So that bolt gets captured into this little crow's foot on the back side of the supercharger. And the easiest way to do this is get your hand inside the supercharger, grab it from the inside, go ahead and set her down and just slide it back onto that crow's foot. Just like that. Now I told you about this little guy. I like to throw him on there first so I don't get him confused with anybody else. Now that we have all the bolts in place, you're going to go on ahead and rock your supercharger back and forth. Make sure that all your bolts are lining up. Go ahead and start threading them in. These bolts are actually a 6 hex head bolt. And I do prefer to use a ball head on here, because the Gen3R is bulbous and round. You're going to want to come off to the side or you will scratch the edge of it. Now, you want to be extra careful because I can come over and just go ahead and grab the bolt from this side, but I can't verify that I'm not going to scratch the side. So I'll be walking back and forth in between this. So now I'm going to go ahead and get my connector right here for my Purge solenoid. I'm going to wrap it up underneath this fuel line and just go ahead and click it together. Just like that. Okay, so now we have our supercharger on. We're gonna go ahead and get our belt up on here. So the tensioner is just the regular drive of a ratchet. So you take your 3/8 ratchet and push straight down on it. And you can come right up over the top. Make sure she's in the grooves all the way around and that you are, in fact, in the correct grooves on your AC pulley, and touch all the way around on your crank as far as you can to make sure it's on the crank pulley, which this one is. So if we can get the camera down here, I'd like to show you how close this is to being maxed out as a tensioner. So you'll notice that when I pull my tensioner down, this is as far as you can go before it stops itself. So that is good belt wrap. You know that you're gonna have a good performance on this belt and this drive setup. If you weren't down this low, then you probably have too much slack in your belt and you're gonna need to readjust. Also, if you don't have your tab in correctly, this tensioner would be shifted up too far and your belt won't fit. So now we're gonna go ahead and connect this heater hose that you didn't have to take off, but it does help with the install. So line that up. Next, we're gonna take our PCV hose. We're just gonna go ahead and click that into place, just like that. So now we're gonna install the throttle body. It'll come with this bolt kit, and I'll show you how to select your bolts. So this one is gonna need 3 of the smaller ones, and then this medium-sized one here. So if you take your throttle body and you drop your bolts through, you'll see how far they come out. And you'll notice this medium-sized one comes out just a little bit further. So the most important thing on this throttle body is to make sure you connect the throttle body before you install it. Just making sure you guys can see this. So connect it together. Be sure to lock it down. Then I hold my gasket in place with the bolts. These are 5 hex heads. Now it's important to pay attention to your gasket. Make sure you don't fall inside or that you're not pinching it. And that is your throttle body install. So now we're going to move forward and pull the bumper cover off. So we got to get the trim pieces out of the way. And if you haven't noticed, this car has the hood struts on it. So this is just in the way a little bit. All these clips do is just pull them out. So just get up underneath them. Pull the center pin and then the whole assembly. So these bolts here are 8 millimeters. There's little tiny ones down in here. These are 5.5 millimeter. Get both of these out. Now we're ready to lift up the car. So now we're going to remove the belly pan. So these are all 7mm bolts across, and you have a couple push clips. So I like to leave these 2 bolts in for the last ones just to control this pan. Go ahead and remove your push clips. Now you have 2 more push clips that are tabbed into the wheel wells. So these are on the insides of the wheel wells. And then take your last 2 remaining 7mm out. Come on. So now we can go ahead and grab our connectors for your marker lights and your fog lights. We have those disconnected. Now we need to get the edges of the wheel wells out. So the wheel well clips, you're gonna have one all the way inside here. You're gonna have 3 up against the edge here, and I do like removing the one at the very top. It just makes things easier, but it's not necessary to do every time. So we're gonna start with this back one. And then the 3 here on the edge. And this is the last one I like to remove just because I can fit my hand inside the fender a little better. So you take that one out. So I like to point out the differences in the clips. These clips on the edge are going to be smaller. The clip in the very back is going to be a little bit bigger. And then the clips on the belly pan are the large ones. So that matters when you go back together because you want this as secure as it can be for the force of the wind pushing up against your wheel wells. So up in here is where the 11 to 14s differ from the 15 to 17s. They would just actually pull right out of the side, and a lot of people grab these and just pull them out and end up breaking this fender cover. So what you want to do is take 7mm, and then you're going to need a little universal socket on the end of it. And right up here, he's about 1 inch back. Just go ahead and take out that 7mm. So lastly, what you'll want to do, especially if you haven't done this a lot, is go ahead and protect the side of your paint by running a piece of painter's tape right across the edge for when you go back together. If you're doing this by yourself, this is a great idea because you just don't have to worry that much about the edges here. And I go ahead and I guard the edge of the headlight too. So from here, you're going to want to lift up on the bottom of the fender cover and release the tension off of here and just pull it out, just like that. Now we move to the other side. Now let's move along and pull it off. So now just simply grab a hold of your bumper cover. It's got little tiny centering clips. Get it off the centering clips. just pull it forward. Have you a place already to set it? I have this piece of cardboard right here, but they will set up just fine on their own like that. Now we're going to try to get this heat exchanger in, which means this stuff needs to come out of the way. We're going to start with the wire harness. Go ahead and pop them off the back side of the bumper support. I just like to go ahead and remove them all together. This is your ambient air temperature sensor. You're going to want to go ahead and get him free as well. You can leave the sensor there and just take the connector, and then you can pull this up. Happens to be one hiding right here. So there's one last clip on the back side of this bolt to release the wire harness. Go ahead and pull that out, and now this piece is free. Next, we're going to remove the braces. These are 13mm bolts on the top and 13mm nuts down on the back sides here. I like to go ahead and get my wire harness up out of the way. And since I won't be using this clip anymore, just go ahead and remove that. And I won't be using this clip anymore, so go ahead and remove that. So now we're going to clean up this plastic trim piece so it doesn't rub the backside of the heat exchanger. So we don't want this plastic interfering. So what you can do with this is it's rubber right here, and you can just go ahead and slice it with a razor blade. And these right here, I just grab them with a pair of pliers and twist them, and they twist right off, just like that. Also, I like to remove this little edge right here so it doesn't touch the backside of the heat exchanger either. I'm going to highlight it for you so you can see it a little bit better. This guy right here. So you can use a box knife if you want. You can use whatever you like to cut this off. I prefer my rip saw. And I just start at the bottom, keeping an eye on it. Keep the blade flat against the plastic. And of course, watch out for your wire harness. One more cut. The bottom of the heat exchanger tube will come right through here. So what I like to do is just take a piece off right here and follow that around and curve it off on the other side. This is why I like to use my rip saw, because I can make rounded cuts. So come through. Pay attention to the back side of your blade. If you haven't done this before, you could actually cut the end of your blade so you won't hit anything. And that should be enough to get our heat exchanger through. So now we're going to remove the factory bolts in here, and we're going to swap them over to here because these bolts are short, and I'm going to want to take these long bolts to make our mount for our intercooler pump. So take these off one at a time. That's a 13mm bolt. It's a little bit longer. And you take and you swap this one out for the short one. I like to do them in sequence like this, just in case the car has been in a collision you didn't know and all this is bent. So don't pop off all your bolts and expect that it's going to go right back together. Now we're simply just going to remove the bolts from the other side. These you can go ahead and discard. New hardware will come in your heat exchanger kit. So this is our heat exchanger kit. It will come with your instructions on installing it. your bracket for your intercooler pump. Here's your mounting hardware and some more hose. I like to keep this piece of cardboard for installation. I set all my hardware on it as I'm installing this, but we're filming, so we put it on a nice cool table. So I'm usually on the floor with my piece of cardboard like this. That's how I start. So this is the front, and this is the top right here. So what you're going to want to do is get your hardware. And you have your bushings. The metal goes towards the front of the bumper. This will touch metal. So you clip it in like this. They press together and lock. And then when you get that, you have an insert. You'll take your insert, and that's just to keep from crushing the bushing. You take your insert, push your insert in. Once again, the washer goes towards the bumper. Take your insert. And your last one. Now your heat exchanger set up. So now take your bolts. You're going to put a washer on each bolt. Just like that. Now let's go to the car. Let's take your bolt washer setup, and you're going to run it into the bumper bracket until you're flush on the back side. So put your finger on the back side. When you touch your finger, go to the next one. Now our bumper is prepped for the heat exchanger. Let's get that in. So now you're going to take the face of it with your brackets on top. This would be your inlet port. Sleeve it up through the bottom. Make sure your ambient air intake temp connector is out of the way. So notoriously, this driver's side is a little harder. Just line it up. Run your bolt through to capture it. All right, now that the bolts are through, you can let go. Go ahead and put a washer on the back side. And I'll show you a cool lock nut trick here in a minute. Run your other bolts through. Make sure they're centered. Okay, so here's my cool trick. Don't tell anybody. But I didn't run the bolt all the way through. So I've got the nut almost onto the locking edge. So you run it, hold your nut still, and run the bolt into the lock nut. So now I've got a hold of the lock nut on the back side. Reverse your tool, back the bolt back out. The lock nut will stay locked to the bolt, and it'll pull your whole assembly forward. Just simply come back in here, hold the nut again, and continue tightening. Now it's installed and you didn't fight your lock nut. We're going to do the same thing to the bottom. I'm going to hold it, I'm going to run the bolt in. Now I'm going to pull the bolt back out. It's up against the lock nut. Continue forward. Do the same thing to the other side. Now you can move forward with reconnecting your ambient air intake, your ambient air temp sensor, like that. Let's move on to mounting your intercooler pump. Now we're going to install our intercooler pump bracket. Take your 13mm nuts. Spin them in as quick as you can. Next, we'll take our intercooler pump, and you can see it has an arrow on it. This arrow here will be facing towards your heat exchanger. This is the flow of the coolant. So take your brackets on. Slip your bolt in. Make sure you angle the pump correctly right now. Go ahead and bolt in your other strap. And these are 11mm nuts. Now we're going to move on to plumbing. So now you're just going to take your bulk hose from your heat exchanger kit. You're just going to simply install your heat exchanger side. Run your clamp on it. When you come over here to make this cut, always give yourself just a little more than you think you need, because you can always trim it back. You don't want to run out of hose. So I give myself like a ½ inch more than I think I need. Probably right about here. Go ahead and add some install lube. Slide your clamp on. And this time it didn't work out for me. I actually got a little bit too much, so I'm just going to pull this right back off. I'm just going to take a little nip off of it. And all you're really looking for is to make sure that this hose does not kink after it's installed. So we're look good, so now we'll head down for the routing for this one. You're going to take your bulk hose and you're going to run it up in between the radiator hose and the frame. Then you're going to come around the back side of the horns. Make sure your clamp is on. And go ahead and connect that. Watch to make sure there's no kinks. And connect your clamp. Just like that. So now we're going to go ahead and install your outlet water hose, and that's going to come up into your intercooler itself. So You can see that this is at a slight tilt upward. We're gonna punch a hole right here. I'm using a 1 3/4 hole saw. Be sure to run your fingers behind this to make sure where you're going through isn't gonna hit any wiring. Take you a good look, but it's right about here is where we're gonna go. Just like that. And now we're ready to install our hose. So you'll see on the two ends here, there's a really sharp turned end, and then there's this long piece here. This piece here is for going around your radiator, and this piece here is to go around your belt to get up to your intercooler. So this one goes on the inside, the nice sharp hook. So we're gonna run this in. Pay attention to your routing. You're gonna come up around the AC line on the inside. And we'll show you this once we get it all installed better. Go ahead and grab your squeeze clamp. And when you're putting these hoses together, it always helps just a little bit of lube on the edges. They just don't fight you as much. So this is our outlet heat exchanger hose that we just installed. On this other end, I have it routed up underneath the wiring to the fan shroud, and it tucks up underneath the AC line. And then you just simply bring it over with the upper radiator hose, and it's going to go to the bottom connection down here. Just like that. So now we have this hose in place. We're gonna go ahead and install our factory degas bottle, and we'll move on to the Supercharger degas bottle. So for your factory one, of course, just gonna go right back where she came from. So out of your kit, you will have this bypass hose. This is going to replace your factory hose. So we're going to go ahead and hook this hose in. We'll just go ahead and spin your bolts in for now. And remember, I told you to keep your old clamps. We're going to use them now. So the easiest way I found to install this is, of course, use a little bit of super lube to help. I get a pair of needle nose for this one. And I'm just going to simply install the clamp and the hose at the same time. Like that. And then this will route over just like this. So again, I'm going to put a little bit of super lube in there. Now this side is not as picky, so you can go ahead and just put your clamp on. And it's actually in its lock right now. You can see that it's locked in. So just slide that on. And then once you get it on, you just pull up on this tab and it releases the lock, just like that. So now we're going to get this one up on there. Go ahead and tighten your bottle up. Now we're going to get this bottle mocked into place. Go ahead and take your bottle, and you'll feel where it wants to sit. There's a flat spot right in here. Pay attention to the edge of your fan shroud. There's a lip on the edge of your fan shroud. Make sure you're inside that fan shroud. edge. Then take your silver Sharpie. Go ahead and mark where your holes are going to be. Are we cutting out for that? We don't put a clip there anymore, but I usually cut out for it. So on the bottom is this little tab right here. You go in here. They usually always line up in the same spot, which is right here. There you go. Just go ahead and mark that. And now we're going to install our bottle. So now I'm using a 9/32 drill bit. I'm going to go ahead and drill that. You can, if you come in here and fill, the fan actually ends like right about here, so you're not in danger of touching the fan, but make sure you don't come in at an angle like this. That is bad. You're going to keep it straight down. So all I did was use the side of my drill bit as a router tool. So just punch a hole on each side and connect the two. And that is right where that bottle's gonna sit. So next we're gonna have to make these clamps line into here. So you're gonna need a triangle pattern right here, which right on the curve, just go ahead and so you put two holes right next to each other like that. Then take a third hole right here. Now that you got your three holes, you want to connect them. So that should be enough to allow this to pass through and clip into place. Now we got one more to do. Once again, two holes side by side. So now make sure that your tab goes in. Look at that, nice and flush. So now we're going to measure our hose. As you can see, the inlet's on this side. So you're going to bring your hose over. It's going to rest on top of the lower radiator hose. Come around into the center of your fan assembly. And then from here, we just see how far down we go. So I can show everyone where it's at. We're going to trim right about here. Now go ahead, hook up your bottle. This is included in your hardware. These are 10mm bolts. You can go ahead and tighten these up now. So we have one last hose to do. So now we're going to install this hose from your kit You'll see I've put one squeeze clamp on the hooked end, which will go towards the bottle. This side will go to the top end of the intercooler. So I've already lubed the inside of this, and it's a lot easier to go ahead and get your clamp in place over here and just stab this hose on like that. You can bring this clamp around. That. Now we're going to hook it to the bottle. So I have moved the bypass hose to the top of these hoses assemblies, and you just go ahead and connect your hose right to the bottle. Like that. Here's your heat exchanger harness. We're going to move right into wiring it right now. We're going to start here at the grounds. When you open it, be sure to take your fuse, save that, set that aside. You're definitely going to need that. So right here at your ground points here, these are 8mm bolts. You're going to take your relays, and these relays are going to clip to the top and the bottom. So now that you've got these secure, you're going to go ahead and take your ground strap, and I do a loop with my ground strap around them, and I come up through and I grab the center ground like this. So now we can go ahead and cinch this down. I always start with the ground strap. So we get the ground in. I put these at a little bit of an angle. So nice and secure. So next you're going to move on, you're going to find your fuses. So you're going to take your whole fuse whip and you're going to run right up next to the washer bottle up top. You can grab it up here and just pull it through. Just like that, and we'll come back to this in a second. So just so you can get a better look at this, you can see the 3 ground bolts. You put one of your relays on the bottom, one of your relays on the top, and make sure that your ground is centered, and I tighten that one down first so I know I have a good ground. So now take the connections from the heat exchanger. These go to our spall fans. Pull those down. Go ahead and take your new wire harness, put it up over the subframe edge right here. Go ahead and clip in your first fan. Then grab a hold of your second fan, clip it in, and then we're going to continue this routing on top over here on this side. Now this gets really close to the outlet pipe, so I actually just push it up in through here on the back side and pull it on through, just like that. So now we're going to take your intercooler pump connector and just clip it on. Make sure you hear it click, just like that. Now that we've routed our wiring and connected all our connections, I've zip tied it up underneath to make it look pretty. You may do the same. We've moved up top now. I like steeling this spot here for your AC, let's see, is this a low or a high side? This is a high side connector line right here. We're going to steal this spot because our tuners love being able to grab these nice and easy. These guys will just hang out right there. I take my wiring and I run it in behind the jug, and I run it up underneath the fuse box right here on top of the computer. You can just simply grab it, pull it right through. Go ahead and remove this box, lift it all the way up, give it a tug to the side, tabs right out. So you're going to remove your 10mm nut here from your fuse box. Go ahead and add that. You're going to want to take this wire and tuck it down so you can get your fuse cover back on. Now we're going to pull this fuse right here. So this is fuse 66. And if you keep the barb, this barb on this side, you will have circuit protection. If you flip it around the other way, you will not have circuit protection. So let's go ahead and keep it like this. Simply take your wire, tab it in. Make sure you get inside the sleeve and not in between the plastic and the connection. Fold it down. I just route it right in through in here. Take my trusty hose pick, just kind of push it down in here. Just to make it look pretty, I kind of tuck it right up in here. I don't know, it's mentioned somewhere. Just tuck it all in here nice and pretty. Go ahead and snap this back on. Just like that. Now our wiring portion is complete. So now we're going to modify your Purge hose, which is this one. And you get two pieces of line in your kit. The larger one, the fatter diameter, this is your vacuum line. Your other one will actually say on it for fuel use. This is the one you need for your Purge solenoid. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the quick release ends off. Just take your razor blade. Watch the fingers. Just put a nice slice in the plastic, and that should pop right off. Same thing to the opposite side. Pulls off. So this you can go ahead and throw in the garbage. So now you take your new hose, go ahead, put your quick releases on. Like that. So now we're going to install it in the car. So we're going to start with the connection underneath the brake booster. So just reach in here with the quick connects. It's nice and easy. Push all the way down and push it. Give a tug. Make sure that you're actually locked in, which we are. Now we're going to move to the Purge solenoid. So now we're going to take this in. We're going to rotate it up. Hear the click, and if you did not break your lock, you can go ahead and reinstall your lock right now. Just like that. So go ahead and tuck this up out of the way of the master cylinder, and we'll secure that out of the way in just a second. So off of your old Purge line, you can take this clamp off, and we're going to install that to hold our new hose. So I take my needle nose and I just kind of fold these out a little bit. Go ahead and grab a hold of the hose. And then fold these out again. Just like that. And then this will go back in the original location you took it out of, which is right here. Make sure to give enough slack that you're not pinching the hose. It looks good. Now we're going to hook up your check valve and your vacuum line to your brake booster. Be sure to pay attention that this is your fuel vapor rated one and this is your vacuum line. The fuel vapor will eat through this hose. So take your check valve out. Let's go ahead and I still like to use a little bit of assembly lube. Go ahead and put them together. All right. And feed this through. It's going to come out this side. We're going to this steel pipe on the back side of your supercharger. So we need about this much. Let's go ahead and cut that to length. I give myself just a little bit more just in case I'm wrong. Go ahead and hook up your check valve to your brake booster. Now we're going to get on the other side and install this. So now on this side, I just take a little assembly lube. Grab a hold of your vacuum line. So now we get to the fun part. We're going to put on our cold air. That means we're getting to the very end. This is the exciting time, folks. So here's some of the pieces we saved. Remember your MAF sensor. Now be sure that this faces forward. You're going to scoop the air into that part. And then our standoff for our air box. And this will come in your kit. This car didn't have a sound tube, but if you have a sound tube, this will be the plug to plug up your firewall. And it's located right next to your brake booster. You can stick your hand in there right now and pop it on. And then we'll have, these are for MAF wash. This piece actually goes up in the hood. And I'll show you how to get that in there. And then this goes around the side of the tube. So now let's get to assembling it. So I'm going to get these pieces out. We're going to go ahead and install your MAF. So this goes on one way. All you got to do is put it on. The bolt holes don't line up. So we'll flop it around. Magically, the bolt holes line up. So be sure that this is going to be your front inlet. So you're going to scoop that in this way. And if you can see in the tube how it's supposed to be installed. These connections are not super tight, they are just snug. You have a gasket here. Don't break the plastic running in your screws. But do make sure it's tight enough that there's no air bleeding through. Next, we're going to go over here. We're going to put on this tube. And then I have some vacuum caps here. I'm just going to go ahead and cap these off because we won't need them. All right, next we're going to go ahead and prep our collar, which I take these off. And I'm a real stickler about this. Line up your JLT. Take the pride, take the time. Your customer deserves it. Unless it's your own car, then you can put it wherever you want. So next, just go ahead and put on your hose clamp. Give yourself a little room. These are 8mm. Now we're going to go ahead and install our box. You can see the nose of the box is already in there. You're going to keep it like that until you're installed. You're just going to go ahead, pull your harness up out of the way. You're going to drop that down. You're going to have to push in a little bit here to get it to drop in below the fender. And then we've kept from our original hardware the standoff mounting. You're going to go ahead and run your bushing in first. It just squeezes into place. Next, you're going to take your standoff and go and run it in there. And then you're going to find your bolt hole. So I'm just holding that. I haven't tightened it yet. Now we're going to probably have to get a better angle at this, but we're going to slide this tube forward and channel it into the front of the nose. So now you just simply slide this forward, and it has 2 locking pins on it, so you'll know when you're in the correct position in the inside of the housing. But for this one, you'll see that this tabs over this piece, so you get a really good air seal. And you just simply push it forward, and it will lock in place. Just like that. So from this angle, you can get a better view of what's going on. You can see the 2 tabs that are locked in on both sides. You also have that on the bottom. So when you slide this forward and collar over this piece in the front, you really feel it snap in, and it's nice and secure. Now we're going to go ahead and install our tube. Make sure to put your hose clamp on. Now before I install the tube, I go ahead and I hook up my MAF sensor connector here. And I'm just going to run it right along the bottom side of the tube. Let's go ahead and install your air filter. So right there is the seam. Don't show people your seam. Point your seam down, people. Let's make it look pretty. Just like that. And in fact, I'm going to spin my clamp around so it looks even better. So this connector right here needs to be on the inside. Up over here. We're going to go ahead and tighten everything up and make sure it is in the proper alignment. Now what I didn't show you before, on the inside of your air filter, there's actually a stop in here. And you're going to want to pressed up against that stop. You don't want to go over it, or you're going to interfere with the airflow into the supercharger. So these are still just 8 millimeters. Now we just simply connect our MAF connector. Lock it down. Now this should all just sit in a straight line. You'll notice that you're not bound up on any kind of weird angle, and it sits down in here flush. This piece will just simply go into here to seal the hood against the tube. And then you have this piece here, which goes into the top of the hood, and it just slides in here. And we're going to guard that air from coming in and washing out the MAF sensor. Like that. Now you see what I'm talking about with showing your seam? You just simply roll it down to the bottom, like that. And then make sure that the edge here of the lip, they're seated together, and you don't go over that lip. And then just simply click in your MAF sensor and install your air dam. So you can go ahead and install your PCV hose. Just click it in, both sides. The 45 goes onto the side of the air intake tube. So now we're going to move forward with installing the fuel system booster. So for 11 to 14, you'll need this fuse, and it will go in cavity number 13. I'm dealing with a 15 and up vehicle, so I will not need this fuse. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this aside. And then I'm going to show you how to trim this to make it fit. All you're going to do is get you out a razor blade. And this ear right here, we're going to take off that larger, it's a taller but half-size ear. So just simply shave that guy down. Just like that, and give it a little clean. So this is ready for this car. Now you're going to flip over your booster itself. Take your double-sided Velcro, go ahead and slap him on there. So now let's go ahead and move into the car. So now we're going to go ahead and pull this rear seat. You've got two clips. You just push in right here and another one right here. Push it in. Go ahead and lift this up out of the way. And we're going to be going after this guy right here. So go ahead and disconnect him. And you're going to have to trim this up right here. I've already done a video on how to do this, so now I'm going to show you the flat rate quick way of doing this. I just simply scribe it while it's in place. Give it 2 good scribes like that. I take out my old trusty pocket knife. Come in here and clean it up. Now we're going to go ahead and connect our connector. Make sure you hear it click. Then this other one we've already trimmed on the bench. It will click right in. So next you're going to go to your trim panel right here. You're going to roll your trim panel out and go ahead and grab the piece of foam behind it. Just pull it straight down and roll it right out. This is going to be our spot for our new booster. So take your booster, go ahead and remove the back side of the Velcro, and go ahead and install it just like that. So now we're going to go ahead and get our ground situated. So in this model, there's a case ground on the side of the FPDM, and we'll get a better shot of that in a minute, but that means that I'm going to ground right here. If you don't have a case ground right here, you can lift the FPDM up clean underneath it and go up underneath it, or you can go over to a seat bolt or however you feel. That's why we've left the ground open for you, just for we can have this sent for all different applications. And then I just trim this down a hair. I'm going to pull my insulation off. Go ahead and connect your ground. If you don't know, there is a little slice in the top of here. And what you want to do is you're going to make a W crimp. So there's the tooth on your crimpers, and you're going to push the tooth into that little split in the metal. And it makes a nice little W, just like the factory. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull out this 10mm bolt. I'm going to go ahead and go underneath my wiring. Tighten this down and go ahead and then connect your fuel system booster into the system like that. Now you're ready to reinstall the seat, but we're going to get over here and get you a better picture of this case ground, what I'm talking about. So you can see right here the metal plate that goes up underneath. Some of these new ones do not have this metal plate on it, and that is a case ground. If not, you can just simply go up underneath this. If you clean the metal off, just make sure your ground is a good ground. You'll know if this wire gets warm that you don't have a good ground. Now we're going to reinstall the bottom of the seat. Just roll it in here. You have the separation in between for your hinge in the middle. Slide it into that first, and then go ahead and grab your buckles. I clip in my seatbelt buckles before I set this down. This is safety. You do not want your customer coming in and finding out they don't have a belt buckle. So push the whole assembly towards the back, and you can feel it just fall into place and it'll clip in. Now once you got it in, go ahead and give you a tug. Make sure that you're locked in. Go ahead and pull on your seat belts and leave these for the customer to take off. So now it's time we're gonna fill the system. If you're an older tech like me, this tool was a game changer. So we're gonna vacuum fill it. All you gotta do is hook your gauge in. Go ahead and hook compressed air to it. We're gonna pull this down to about 28 inches of mercury. So in our systems, we like to use two different colors of coolant. Of course, you have the natural orange into your engine that comes factory, and we'll put green into our supercharger. In case we have a leak, we know exactly which system is leaking. It's just a good visual diagnosis. So now that we have all the air out of here, just simply we're going to put in a half a gallon of the green coolant. Then we're just going to simply top it off with water. And soon as the vacuum is out of the system, it's pretty much topped off at the correct level. You may have to adjust a little bit, but it's super close. So now we're going to do the same thing to the engine coolant. Once again, you'll want 28 inches of mercury. That way you know you have the air pocket out. Now you should only have to touch this if you drain the cooling system, which I took it apart so we could get better footage. Once your system's full, you can go ahead and grab your new cap out of the kit and install it on your intercooler degas bottle. Go ahead and spin it around, make it straight. Okay, we're gonna cut this brace down now because this interferes with the backside of your supercharger and your throttle body inlet. So you're gonna notice the witness mark from the seal of the cowl on top of it. I'm gonna highlight that for you. It's right here. Right there is where the seal goes. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that mark And we're going to come straight out from it. And we're going to also take this bevel off because this can sometimes touch the back side of the blower. So we're just going to make a straight line right across. And that'll be your cut. So once you have your piece marked, then you can secure it and go ahead and get your safety gear on and just go to cutting. Now, once you've made your cut, I like to bevel the corner. It gives it a much cleaner look. And then I like to use chassis black and go ahead and paint the edge because you will see this leading edge. Now we're going to install our brace back. Just go ahead and lift up the cowl panel. Be careful not to scratch your supercharger on the way in. Go ahead and get your bolts in. These are 13 millimeters and you have 3 up underneath the cowl panel. And then these are the 15 millimeter nuts we took off before. Go ahead and install these. And go ahead and take your remaining 2 nuts. Even though this piece is not here, this really gives it a finished and clean look. Like that. And don't forget to put in your 4 push pins. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and hook up our battery and download our bass tune into the vehicle. We're going to do that. After this, we can go ahead and start the car up and verify any leaks or any issues. So now that your tune is loaded, all you're going to do is key on and check for intercooler pump flow. And as you can see, you just key on and make sure that your pump is pumping, which this one is. Now we're just going to simply start it up and check for leaks. We are ready to reassemble. Now that we've completed our Gen3R install and the vehicle is back together, it's time for you to take a look at your tuner's notes on how to do data logging. Also, you've just put a supercharger on your vehicle, so we recommend that you go with a full synthetic. We use AMSOIL 5W50. We also sell these in kits. We'd be happy to help you out if you need. We also have a bunch of supporting mods and, of course, all the VMP gear you need. So be sure to hit us up with a like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.